Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Coffee with Craig. This is where we talk about all things Second Amendment and Second Amendment related, trying to bring to them, well, a little bit of what I like to call uncommon sense, because as you all know, common sense is just not that common, at least, unfortunately, not when it comes to anti-gunners. So please take a moment to like and share this video feed so that your friends can join in the conversation. Also, want to remind you guys, please remember to visit fpcgear.com. That's fpcgear.com. We have all sorts of cool t-shirts, all sorts of cool hoodies, coffee mugs, any opportunity, any way in which you may want to show your support for the Second Amendment and look good doing it, you can find it at fpcgear.com. All right, let's get into today's topic. Now, you guys may remember a little over a month ago, or well over a month ago, we told you guys about a case that we filed against California Attorney General Javier Becerra. Now, the reason why we filed this case was dating back to the bullet button registration program that was an utter failure, or as I like to say, a hot ghetto mess. Well, as it turns out, Attorney General Javier Becerra has decided that he does not want to have this case heard in state court, and has asked for and had it moved to federal court. So, with that, I wanted to bring back on our good friend, Mr. George Lee, to talk with us a little bit about the case and explain to us exactly what all of this means. So, George, welcome to the program once again.
Thank you.
Great.
For having me again. And yes, the case is still alive and kicking, and we are now in federal court. And this was as a result of the Attorney General having the case removed or basically transferred to federal court, which honestly we're disappointed by that move. I do think that it is important for the Attorney General to face accountability in any corner of the state. We originally filed the case in Shasta County, as you remember. And we think that this issue affected gun owners all up and down the state, from San Diego up to Shasta and probably beyond. And we think that the Attorney General should be able to go into any one of the 58 counties in California and to be held accountable for the way that he treats or has treated gun owners in this state. So we're sort of disappointed in the fact that the Attorney General wants to only litigate these matters in places where he feels comfortable, apparently in Sacramento's or the San Francisco's or the Los Angeles's of the world. But we know that that this issue is much broader than people who live in those elite urban areas, and probably affects gun owners much more in many other counties. And so, but that being said, we're ready to proceed with the case in federal court. That's fine too.
All right. So just as a little bit of a refresher, tell our audience a little bit about exactly what the case is about. What are some of the things that are being, what are some of the issues of the case, things that happen? And then number two, what's some of the redress that we're looking for these plaintiffs?
Well, as you put it, it was a mess. This is the online registration system for so-called assault weapons. And by the way, the reason why we use the term assault weapon is because that's the legal definition. That's a legal term, and there's a legal definition of assault.
Thank you for pointing that out, because I get some of my folks in comments say, don't call it assault weapon. Look, that's the legal term. So I thank you for also pointing that out. I appreciate that.
I'm glad to clear that up. And listen, we all know that assault weapon is a made-up political term. We all know the reason why it exists as that made-up political term. We're not casting any judgment as to the propriety of that term, but that's the legal term. It's defined as an assault weapon under California law. And as you recall, pursuant to Proposition 63, that passed in 2016, there is a requirement to register so-called assault weapons or bullet button assault weapons using this mandated online registration system. And as you put it, or as you pointed out, it was a mess. A lot of people couldn't get onto the site. A lot of people couldn't, once they got on, weren't able to upload the pictures that were being required by the DOJ. There were a lot of other problems that just basically resulted in a lot of people being deprived of the ability to comply with the law. That they decided that they wanted to register, and then they couldn't. And all of a sudden, now they're facing the prospect of potentially being branded as criminals, and that due to no fault of their own. That's what the case is about, and what is it intended to redress. The redress that we're actually seeking is very simple. As I explained last time, it's simply asking the court to compel the Attorney General to do what he's supposed to do, which is to allow people to register so-called bullet button assault weapons in conformity of the law, as he's required to do. So it's a pretty straightforward remedy. It's a pretty straightforward case. Really just comply with the law. That's all we ask.
Funny how, asking them to do their job. And I think that was ultimately, originally the reason why it was filed in state court, right? Because the whole goal was, look, they didn't do their job. And when you talk about checks and balances, that's kind of where it's supposed to be. The judicial system within the state checking on the legislature, or in this case, the executive.
That's right. It is a very straightforward state claim of mandamus, which is basically requiring a government official to do what he's supposed to do under law. The case was removed, as we mentioned, to federal court because the Attorney General feels that there's a constitutional question involved. I don't know whether that's some type of implicit suggestion that state court judges aren't capable of hearing constitutional issues. But listen, putting that argument aside, if the Attorney General wants to litigate it in federal court, let's litigate it in federal court. And we've actually amended the complaint to include a violation of civil rights claim under federal law, which is called a Section 1983 action, or Section 1983 claim. Because listen, if we're going to litigate this case in federal court, we might as well get our money's worth. Let's go, let's litigate a federal case. So that's where we are.
All right. So now a couple of things with that. Now I noticed that we got a judge that that we're familiar with.
Right, and we're not, as I mentioned, we'll litigate this issue with the Attorney General in any form. And in this case, after it was removed to federal court, it was assigned to Judge Morrison England, who has actually ruled in FPC's favor in a past case. So we're pleased with that development, and we think Judge England certainly will be fair and knows that the government must be held accountable from time to time. So we're looking forward to it.
Excellent. Now I noticed that we also added the Madison Society as a plaintiff. How does adding an additional plaintiff in this particular case, the Madison Society, how does that help the case?
Well, listen, this case is always about not just one person or a one gun owner or a handful of gun owners, or even just several. It's always been about representing the interests of gun owners up and down the state, which is why we have a broad coalition of organizations that also are plaintiffs in the case, because it wasn't just these 7 individuals who are named in the case. As I mentioned last time, I've talked to dozens of people all up and down the state who had similar problems. And so, we want to impress upon the courts that this doesn't just affect these 7 individuals, it affects a lot more people than that.
Okay, so, and I know we did this last time, but I want to give people an opportunity to know again. So what do people do if they tried to register their firearms and were not able to? And maybe this is the first time they're finding out that there's a court case like this. What should they do?
Yeah, always happy to remind people, or to provide this information to people who are just hearing about this for the first time. But first things first is, I think, and without again delving into legal advice, I think you need to disassemble the weapon, and the DOJ regulations makes it easy by saying that an AR-15, if you separate the upper and the lower on an AR-15, that is no longer considered a semi-automatic weapon for registration purposes. So there's that level of reliance on the DOJ's own regulations. But I think that if you realize that you're in this situation, that you attempted to register, but you couldn't because you couldn't get onto the DOJ's website, or you couldn't upload the pictures, or there was other technical issues. For example, it might have timed you out. Any number of technical reasons why you weren't able to register the so-called bullet button assault weapon by the June 30 deadline, please get in touch with FPC, the Legal Action Hotline, or get in touch with me, and we can talk about it. Excellent.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Very much appreciate you, and appreciate all the work that you do. As we know, the federal court system, unfortunately, is no faster than the state court system. So I'm assuming it could be quite a while before we have any significant developments in this case. Correct?
That's the frustrating part about this business, is that while the needs are immediate, a lot of times, and we do require immediate relief, the court systems are not always caught up to that, and it does take a while for these cases to work their way through. But just have to have patience and fortitude, and we'll carry on.
Now, is there a preliminary injunction that's being sought, at least to protect folks, at least between now and when a final decision is being made?
Sure. We originally filed a request for preliminary injunction in the state court, and we will likely go forward with it in the federal court as well. But what we'd be seeking to do is basically to prevent any arrests and prosecutions of people for possessing an unregistered assault weapon when the DOJ didn't let you register in the first place. I mean, there's just something fundamentally unfair about that, and I think anyone can recognize it. So yes, we will be seeking that and other forms of relief to protect gun owners and make sure that they're not being taken advantage of by this sort of lackadaisical way that they've gone about with setting up this registration system.
I really appreciate how politically correct you are. It's okay. You don't have to call it a hot ghetto mess. I'm going to call it a hot ghetto mess, because that's pretty much any time California Department of Justice or the state of California is asked to set up a website. That's pretty much what it is.
Well, I've never seen the term hot ghetto mess used in the legal filing, but I pledge to you that if there's an appropriate time to use it, that we will consider using it. Sure.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Very much appreciate you and all the work that you do. Look forward to a positive outcome on this one.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, folks. Well, that's going to be it for today's Coffee with Craig. Thank you so much for tuning in. As you see, we have a lot going on. So in order to make that happen, we need your help and we need your support. We need you to support FBC by becoming a member. Go to joinfbc.org. That's joinfbc.org. And also by spreading the word, liking and sharing these videos as well as our podcast, and letting people know about the Firearms Policy Coalition. We are the home in the fight for civil rights. Got to use them or you're going to lose them. You guys take care.
If you like our videos, follow, subscribe, like, and share.